Hello, my name is Capri, and I will be presenting today on the influence of the Catalan language on the people of Spain, with a specific emphasis on the Catalan of Barcelona or Catalonia and the Catalan of Valencia. So, to begin with some context, the Catalan language stems from the Occitan Romance branch and is spoken in many territories in Spain, France, and Italy. Some of those include Catalonia to the northeast of Spain, the Balearic Islands, Valencia, Andorra, the south of France, and in Italy, Sardinia. It is the sixth most spoken Romance language, and of those people who speak Catalan, it is more often their second language than their first. About 5 million speak Catalan as their second language, and 4 million as their primary language. Within these many regions where Catalan is spoken, I have chosen to focus on Valencia and Catalonia. Catalonia or Barcelona is often referred to as Northern or Central Catalan, whereas Valencia is often referred to as Western Catalan. And although the Spanish Constitution recognizes the Catalan spoken in Valencia as its own official language, most people and most linguists will simply refer to it as a dialect of Catalan instead of its own unique language. And this is where I was a little intrigued by some of those patterns and the language and dialect within the country of Spain, and something as simple as what seems as simple as language and how that carries over and has implications in society, politics, and culture. So a little history with the Catalan language. They have a history of being oppressed, and more than once in their history, their language has been prohibited. When Spain was originally divided into its different kingdoms, the Catalonians, or the Catalan speakers, living within the Aragonese culture, were respected and allowed to speak as they pleased. But when Isabella and Ferdinand were married and their kingdoms were united, things began to change as wars and attempts for power ensued. In 1702, we see the War of Spanish Succession, which resulted in Barcelona officially losing their independence, and along with that, losing the right to speak their language. Catalan was prohibited and removed from all official documentation, and as a result of that, Catalan lost a lot of political and cultural prestige, as the widespread message of the time was to, quote, speak the imperial language, which at the time was considered Castellano, or the language spoken in the mainland Spain. During the 20th century, Catalonia nationalism rose up again, and they did gain their independence for a short time. But unfortunately, in 1936, with the Spanish Civil War and the dictatorship of Franco, Catalonia, being a republic, was taken by nationalist forces, and once again, the Catalan language was prohibited. So today, Catalan speakers do have their rights and their freedoms. They are allowed to speak their language with freedom and teach the language in their schools. It's considered an official state language, and we see the growth of varying dialects, how that has expanded throughout the region. This will give you a brief taste of what Catalan sounds like.
Doncs em dic Joan Lluís Lluís, soc de Perpinyà, que és un tros de Catalunya que es troba actualment a França.
So I just wanted to give a small a jump into that now before I dive into some of the linguistical variations. Now that we've seen the Catalan language in context in general, I hope to give more detail to the varying dialects or languages within it. And again, those are Valencian and Catalonian. And although I can not obviously expound on every linguistic difference between the two, I'll share a few phonological or morphological differences that most stand out and that are most recognizable. So to begin, in Valencian, there is no voiced fricative sha, but only the ja, whereas in Catalonia you will hear more of that voiced ja. And forgive my pronunciation of these phonemes. In Valencian, the voiced labial dental va is present, whereas in Catalonia, the va has merged to be more bilabial, similar to that of Castellano. The alveolar ere is shortened to the tap, ere, whereas in Catalonian, it might be more common to pronounce with a short trail, ere. And finally, looking at a few morphological differences and vocabulary examples, the articles used in Valencian are lo and los, whereas in Catalonia, el and els are those articles used. And then most Valencian singular verbs are monosyllabic, or they have an E termination, whereas in Catalonian, it follows more of a pattern similar to that of Spanish or Italian, with those singular verbs ending in O. And then again, there's a very long list of vocabulary differences between the two dialects or languages. I've put two here, the word for two, and the plural man. So how have these linguistic differences between Castellano and Catalan carried over into society and politics? In one of our ratings by Posner, it is quoted, "Racial and linguistic admixture, social upheaval, and religious strife were and are hallmarks of the time. The effects of these factors on linguistic development are complex and manifold." And that's where I want to conclude here with some of those prevalent ideas that are carried today in Spain. So we know that Catalan has experienced a history of oppression and continually seeking independence from Spain. Most recently, in 2017, Catalonia held a referendum to decide if they wanted to separate from Spain. And this had cultural, economical, and political motives, knowing that Catalonia contributes greatly financially, almost a fifth, to the entire country of Spain, but they are still governed by Madrid. I found in my research that there were two main and opposing ideas that are kind of seen and expressed today. The first comes from those who are actively fighting for and in favor of independence and separation from Spain. This term, within the context of language, was coined as authenticity, which is where the people desire to stay true to the language and its value, maintaining its roots. And so when a language is prohibited, it is spoken less, and therefore it can become lost. And as this is something that they've seen in their past, these people often want independence and want to separate and use language as that driving force. The other idea, or the opposing idea to that, stems from a language term called anonymity, which emphasizes the opposite, or more of a fluid and neutrality in the language. So these are those who don't necessarily agree with the separatist movements and think that it is better to stay connected to Spain. They believe that language is the bridge that connects between cultures and regions, and they might place more emphasis on bilingualism and adopting and expressing the surrounding languages. And especially with so many changes today in communication and influx in immigration, this focuses more on that unity and that cosmopolitanism than the opposite of language being connected specifically to one geographical route. So there is still a lot for Spain to explore within that framework of their many languages and dialects, and how that influences the decisions that are made within their country. Thank you for your time.